As you're well aware by now, the book of Judges records Israel's tragic, repeated cycle of apostasy. Each cycle, the nation rebels against God, faces divine punishment, cries out for mercy, and is rescued by a judge who God sends. Gideon was one of these great judges who delivered Israel from the hand of the Midianites, the Amalekites, and neighboring tribes. Gideon succeeded because of his obedience. That's the story of Gideon. He correctly, after the fact, refused the monarchy. But in his last years, he assumed a king-like lifestyle with many wives and at least one concubine who bore him a son called Abimelech, a name meaning, "My father is king." Upon Gideon's death, the people in Israel immediately revert back to Baal worship, and thus the apostasy cycle begins anew. But the story this week is an outlier. There's no judge in chapter 9. There's an anti-judge, Abimelech, who takes power over Israel, ruling Israel like a judge might. But he's not sent by God. And God brings justice this time, not against his wayward people, but by pitting two enemies against one another, both of them the enemies of Israel and of God. Abimelech, on the one hand, the tyrant son of Gideon, conspires with the men of Shechem, his first allies, to kill the other sons of Gideon. And in response, our just God kills both Abimelech and the men of Shechem, all to teach this big point. God's justice covers not only Israel, but all the nations. We'll see that unfold. This is a bit of a long one, but it's very interesting. Look with me at chapter 9, verse 1. Now Abimelech, son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem to his mother's kinsfolk, and said to them and to the whole clan of his mother's family, "Say in the hearing of all the lords of Shechem, which is better for you, that all 70 of the sons of Jerubbaal rule over you, or that one rule over you? Remember also that I am your bone and your flesh." So his mother's kinsfolk spoke all these words on his behalf in the hearing of all the lords of Shechem. And their hearts inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, "He is our brother." They gave him 70 pieces of silver out of the temple of Baal-berith, with which Abimelech hired worthless and reckless fellows who followed him. He went to his father's house at Ophrah and killed his brothers, the sons of Jerubbaal, 70 men on one stone. But Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, survived, for he hid himself. Then all the lords of Shechem and all Beth Millo came together, and they went and made Abimelech king by the oak of the pillar at Shechem. We'll pause there. This section is called Abimelech's conspiracy. Yes, there were conspiracies way a long time ago. Abimelech conspires with his kin in Shechem, a town 10 miles from Ophrah. Ophrah is Gideon's town. He conspires with his kinsfolk to kill all the sons of Gideon, the legitimate sons of Gideon, and therefore rule over Israel. Only Jotham, the youngest brother, survives. Shechem and Ophrah are both towns in the promised land of Canaan. And like we saw at the beginning of Judges, the people of Israel had mixed for generations with the Canaanites. So they flip-flopped worship of Yahweh, worship of the Canaanite gods. There's something of an ethnic tinge to this conspiracy where Abimelech uses his family ties in Shechem to overthrow the sons of Gideon who are not related to Shechem. This conflict does not come out of nowhere. We notice that there's no judge in chapter 9. That's because this is kind of a postlude to the story of Gideon. All this trouble that happens in Israel is because Gideon failed at the end of his life. Gideon set up this problem. The men of Shechem attack because they believe that the 70 brothers will assume rule. Well, who do you assume rule from? From a ruler. Gideon was de facto ruling. Gideon lived as a king in all but name. This was wrong of Gideon. Gideon correctly earlier refused the title of king after his great military success, after the people want him to rule over them. Yet, as we saw at the end of chapter 8, he lived like a corrupt king would. Most obviously, naming that son, illegitimate son, my father is king. What are you saying about yourself if you name your son, my father is king? You're saying, I am a king. As a de facto king, Gideon failed, leading to a succession crisis that Abimelech seizes upon with his Shechemite contingent. The Bible warns of this. Even if Gideon was eligible to be a king, even if Gideon accepted the title of king, which he didn't and he wasn't allowed to, Deuteronomy 22, which was written well before the story of Judges, expressly forbids a king from taking many wives because he will fail, because he'll worship like the many wives. And this is besides taking concubines like Abimelech's mother, which is a big no-no. Abimelech then rules Israel. Gideon ruled Israel, his son Abimelech ruled Israel. Abimelech's rule is unjust. He took it with a conspiracy. It's invalid. He wasn't a legitimate ruler, but it's rule nonetheless as a tyrant. Well, what's the correct analysis of this conflict? How should we take it? How does the man of God respond? If you were a clear-eyed, educated Christian living in this time, how would you view the conflict? Well, listen to the speech of Jotham, who was there, who is intimately related, who was mourning his brother's death. Verse 7. When it was told to Jotham, he went and stood on the top of Mount Gerizim and cried aloud and said to them, Listen to me, you lords of Shechem, so that God may listen to you. The trees once went out to anoint a king over themselves. So they said to the olive tree, Reign over us. The olive tree answered them, Shall I stop producing my rich oil, by which gods and mortals are honored, and go to sway over the trees? Then the trees said to the fig tree, You come and reign over us. But the fig tree answered them, Shall I stop producing my sweetness and my delicious fruit, and go to sway over the trees? Then the trees said to the vine, You come and reign over us. But the vine said to them, Shall I stop producing my wine that cheers gods and mortals, and go to sway over the trees? So all the trees said to the bramble, You come and reign over us. And the bramble said to the trees, If in good faith you are anointing me king over you, then come and take refuge in my shade. But if not, let fire come out from the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. Now therefore, if you acted in good faith and honor when you made Abimelech king, and if you have dealt well with Jerubbaal and his house, and have done to him as his actions deserved, for my father fought for you and risked his life and rescued you from the hand of Midian. But you have risen up against my father's house this day, and have killed his sons, 70 men on one stone, and have made Abimelech, the son of his slave woman, king over the lords of Shechem, because he is your kinsman. If I say you have acted in good faith and honor with Jerubbaal and with his house this day, then rejoice in Abimelech, and let him also rejoice in you. But if not, let fire come out from Abimelech and devour the lords of Shechem and Beth Millo, and let fire come out from the lords of Shechem and from Beth Millo and devour Abimelech. Then Jotham ran away and fled, going to Beer, where he remained for fear of his brother Abimelech. We'll stop there. your first response might not be to tell a fable. This is the oldest fable in the Bible. It's called the Fable of the Trees. Jotham, through this story, by analogy, condemns the men of Shechem by comparing their evil to the trees. He ends with a curse, Jotham's curse, that they may be devoured like trees are devoured. Abimelech devouring Shechem, and Shechem devouring Abimelech. It takes a moment to understand what he's doing in this fable. Like in a parable, you have to decide what in the story, what characters here are analogous to the characters of reality. This one is spelled out pretty clearly at the end. The bramble is like Abimelech, who's made king, and the common trees, the cedars, are like the men of Shechem, who appointed Abimelech their king. In the story, we have noble plants and common plants. The common trees go to various noble trees and plants to be their king. But this would be a sacrifice for the noble trees, and it would be outside of their created purpose. The olive tree says, should I stop making my rich oil? The fig tree says, should I stop making my sweetness and my delicious fruit? It would be out of line if they stopped this to go do that. That's the logic of the trees. The bramble finally agrees, but only if the cedars appoint him in good faith. If this is not in good faith, let the forest burn. The men of Shechem, like the common trees, have acted faithlessly. They too shall burn. That's Jotham's message. The question of monarchy is a running theme in the book of Judges. And the first thing that the commentaries like to point out, if you pull up your ESV study Bible, is that the book of Judges is written after their time, during the monarchy, looking back. And those editors tend to look back on the relatively lawless period of the Judges as wild. It's like frontier. It's like Wild West out there. They don't like it. They like having a king. They like the stability. The question for us interpreting is, what's God's view of monarchy? Is monarchy good? Is it bad? Is it sometimes good? Is it sometimes bad? Is it God's plan, or is it just something he puts up with? Like he puts up with divorce. God hates divorce, but God permits divorce in the New Testament in one circumstance, and that is infidelity. In the fable, 3 out of the 4 would-be king trees refuse it. They say, that's not for me, that's wrong. And the last one only does so with a condition. So in the view of Jotham, which is the Bible, monarchy is permissible, but also risky. It's assumed that it will happen for bad reasons. It's out of line for the fig tree to stop making its sweetness and go sway over the other trees, and the olive tree with its rich oil sway over the other trees. But saying it's permissible means it can happen, and we Americans might not like to hear that. But that's what the Bible teaches, and we can't get around it. If this is God's word for our lives, we have to read it. Monarchy is narrowly permissible. It's not always a sin. Another fact that's strange to us is the way that the Bible uses curses. Did you see how Jotham's curse came out of his mouth? Cursing is not to use words that your mom doesn't like. Cursing is to declare harm to someone, to wish it upon them, to curse them. Jotham was in a unique situation, one I hope we never see in any of our families. All of his 70 brothers, most of them half-brothers, were killed. That makes Jotham something called a blood avenger in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament law, Jotham, as the nearest living relative to the victims, has an obligation to kill the murderers if he ever finds them. And the murderers, under Old Testament law, could only get out of this by going and living in a city of refuge. You've read this if you've gone through the first 5 books, the Torah. They can go seek asylum in a city of refuge. So Jotham not only has the right to seek justice, to kill the murderers, but he has the obligation. He is a blood avenger. But what is little Jotham going to do? He's the youngest brother who hid away while the massacre happened. And the massacre came with an army of, what were they called? Reckless and no good fellows. That's what we should call gang people these days. They were reckless and worthless. Jotham has no meaningful way to carry out his duty as a blood avenger. So what does Jotham do? He trusts God. A curse is a request for God to do the avenging, for God to find vengeance. Jotham speaks to them, he delivers his curse, and he flees to Beer, a place called Beer, not the drink. Let's see how it unfolds. Look at verse 22. Abimelech ruled over Israel 3 years, but God sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the lords of Shechem. And the lords of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech. This happened so that the violence done to the 70 sons of Jerubbaal might be avenged, and their blood be laid on their brother Abimelech, who killed them, and on the lords of Shechem, who strengthened his hands to kill his brothers. So out of hostility to him, the lords of Shechem sent ambushers on the mountaintops. They robbed all who passed by them along that way, and it was reported to Abimelech. When Gaal, son of Ebed, moved into Shechem with his kinsfolk, the lords of Shechem put confidence in him. They went out into the field and gathered the grapes from their vineyards, trod them, and celebrated. Then they went into the temple of their God, ate and drank, and ridiculed Abimelech. Gaal, son of Ebed, said, "Who is Abimelech, and who are we of Shechem, that we should serve him? Did not the son of Jerubbaal and Zebul his officer serve the men of Hamor, father of Shechem? Why then should we serve him? If only this people were under my command, then I would remove Abimelech. I would say to him, increase your army and come out." When Zebul, the ruler of the city, heard the words of Gaal, son of Ebed, his anger was kindled. He sent messengers to Abimelech at Aramah, saying, "Look, Gaal, son of Ebed, and his kinsfolk have come to Shechem, and they are stirring up the city against you. Now therefore go by night, you and the troops that are with you, and lie in wait in the fields. Then early in the morning, as soon as the sun rises, get up and rush on the city, and when he and the troops that are with him come out against you, you may deal with them as best you can." So Abimelech and all the troops with him got up by night and lay wait against Shechem in 4 companies. When Gaal, son of Ebed, went out and stood in the entrance of the gate of the city, Abimelech and the troops with him rose from the ambush. And when Gaal saw them, he said to Zebul, "Look, people are coming down from the mountaintops." And Zebul said to him, "The shadows on the mountains look like people to you." Gaal spoke again and said, "Look, people are coming down from Tabor Erez, and one company is coming from the direction of Elon Meonium." Then Zebul said to him, "Where is your boast now, you who said, 'Who is Abimelech, that we should serve him?' Are not these the troops you made light of? Go out now and fight with them." So Gaal went out at the head of the lords of Shechem and fought with Abimelech. Abimelech chased him, and he fled before him. Many fell wounded up to the entrance of the gates. So Abimelech resided at Aramah, and Zebul drove out Gaal and his kinsfolk, so that they could not live on at Shechem. On the following day, the people went out into the fields. When Abimelech was told, he took his troops and divided them into 3 companies, and lay in wait in the fields. When he looked and saw the people coming out of the city, he rose against them and killed them. Abimelech and the company that was with him rushed forward and stood at the entrance of the gate of the city, while the 2 companies rushed on all who were in the fields and killed them. Abimelech fought against the city all that day. He took the city and killed the people that were in it, and he razed the city and sowed it with salt. When all the lords of the tower of Shechem heard of it, they entered the stronghold of the temple at El Berith. Abimelech was told that all the lords of the tower at Shechem were gathered together. So Abimelech went up to Mount Zalmon, he and all the troops that were with him. Abimelech took an axe in his hand, cut down a bundle of brushwood, and took it up and laid it on his shoulder. Then he said to the troops with him, "What you have seen me do, do quickly, as I have done." So every one of the troops cut down a bundle and, following Abimelech, put it against the stronghold. And they set the stronghold on fire over them, so that all the people of the tower of Shechem also died, about 1,000 men and women. Pause there. That was a lot of story. Let me summarize the conflict. Abimelech rules not from Shechem, where he came from, where his mother was from, but from a town called Aramah. His man Zebul is his officer that rules the city of Shechem. First, Shechem, his allies, and Abimelech the king grow distance. Shechem starts ambushing travelers to get back at Abimelech. Next, a stranger moves into town, Gaal and his family. He becomes a populist leader. He stirs the people of Shechem to revolt and overthrow against Abimelech. This is another conspiracy like the first one. Zebul, Abimelech's officer, warns the king, who shows up with his army in an ambush. Zebul meets with Gaal at the front of the city. Remember, this is Iron Age warfare. There's a city with the gates, and then the fields are outside the gates. Gaal, the populist, and Zebul, the officer, meet outside the gates. Gaal over and over sees the ambush coming, but Zebul says, "Oh, you're imagining it. Oh, you can handle it." Abimelech the king wins the battle, kills many of them, leaves back to his town. The next day he comes back to the townsfolk. He burns their tower, and thus the people of Shechem, especially the lords, were literally devoured by fire, exactly like Jotham's curse wished for him. Gaal is a perfect foil to Abimelech. Abimelech, as we've said, means my father is king. It means son of a king. Gaal, his name, Gaal, son of Ebed, means son of a slave. Ebed means slave. So you've got son of a king versus son of a slave. Abimelech gained his power in the first place by conspiring with his kin in Shechem to overthrow the sons of Gideon. Gideon is also called Jerubbaal. Gaal does the exact same thing with the exact same men by appealing to their Canaanite heritage. The Canaanite ancestor founded Shechem. Why should we be ruled by this half Israelite, half Canaanite? We should, as Canaanites, overthrow Abimelech. I'll do it, says Gaal. The parallels here sound almost like someone is writing the story, doesn't it? There's a lot of coincidences that happen in the Bible. That's because this is the corny way to put it. History is his story, right? God oversees his creation. Not just looking in from afar. God explicitly caused this rift and all the outcomes by sending a spirit of evil. That happens before all the rifts. God sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the lords of Shechem, and the lords of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech. That's verse 23. He sends a spirit of evil. Now, this requires careful thoughts. God himself is, of course, not evil. 1 John 1, God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. James 1:13, God cannot be tempted with evil, and he himself tempts no one. Proverbs 8 says, the fear of the Lord is the hatred of evil. So evil's here, God is here, they are not the same. Yet, Isaiah 45:7 says this. This is a famous Old Testament problem passage. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. I make peace and create evil, says the Lord. Now, I assure you that God is not a schizophrenic, and God doesn't contradict himself. God also doesn't change his mind. The resolution is in identifying different kinds of evil. In Isaiah 45, when he says, I make peace, I create evil, most newer translations say calamity. The opposite of peace is calamity. So not moral evil, not wrongdoing, not injustice, but harm, calamity. The spirit of evil that God sends in Judges and the evil that God says he creates in Isaiah is harm and calamity. It's bad news for his enemies. That's what we're talking about. Not wrongness, not something that is evil, not sin and injustice. These are impossible for God. Now, the spirit of evil is kind of an interesting phrase, and commentators disagree on how to take this. Should we see a spirit of evil like the angel of death at the Passover, where there was a real personal angel who went house by house, bringing death, but passing over the Hebrew houses? Or is the spirit of evil more like the enmity between man and woman that happens after the fall? Is it a personal spirit or is it a general spirit between the two? At least one commentary I consulted this week says the ancient mind didn't discriminate between these. Those are the same concept. I tend to think it's more like enmity. When God says, I put enmity between man and woman, he puts a spirit of evil, and the result in Judges 9 is treachery from Shechem against their king, Abimelech. Either way, the focus is, this is God's doing. Jotham issues a curse. God's people have been murdered. God brings justice. God sends the Spirit. God does so in fulfillment of Jotham's curse. So in the story so far, Shechem has been literally burned up, just like Jotham said. But there's another half to that curse. Abimelech must die. Abimelech is not destroyed yet. Let's read on and see what happens. Verse 50. Then Abimelech went to Thebez and encamped against Thebez and took it. But there was a strong tower within the city. And all the men and women and all the lords of the city fled to it and shut themselves in. And they went to the roof of the tower. Abimelech came to the tower and fought against it, and came near to the entrance of the tower to burn it with fire. But a certain woman threw an upper millstone on Abimelech's head and crushed his skull. Immediately he called to the young man who carried his armor and said to him, Draw your sword and kill me, so people will not say about me, a woman killed him. So the young man thrust him through, and he died. When the Israelites saw that Abimelech was dead, they all went home. Thus God repaid Abimelech for the crime he committed against his father in killing his 70 brothers. And God also made all the wickedness of the people of Shechem fall back on their heads. And on them came the curse of Jotham, son of Jerubbaal. There the story ends. Abimelech began his conquest by killing the 70 brothers on one stone. And in the end, poetic justice, as if someone's writing the story, he's killed by a millstone. He starts on a stone, he ends on a stone. It came back on his head, literally. This is easy to overthink, but don't. The big point in Judges 9 is spelled out clearly for us. God returned the evil of Abimelech. God also made the evil of the men of Shechem return on their heads. That's God's word about this exchange. We see two mistakes to avoid on God's justice. Two modern assumptions, two nice and friendly Christian errors. On the one side, we can make the mistake of thinking God's justice is all about being nice and tolerant and never punishing. Well, God brings grace. And grace only matters because without grace, there's calamity, there's damnation, there's hell. Grace is favor you get when you don't deserve it, because we all deserve punishment. So one issue to avoid is that God's justice is all rainbows and never severity. The second one, on the other hand, you could make a mistake of thinking God's justice is only about his covenant people, ancient Israel, the New Testament church, and never about humanity in general. In this case, God brought justice against two of the outsiders because of something they've done to Gideon. It's a crime against Gideon by killing Gideon's sons, but cosmic justice is done that they kill each other. They destroy each other, just like Jotham's curse promised. We, all these years later, should therefore fear God in a biblical sense, not as a tyrant who could snap and turn against us. The tyrant is the one who God killed in this chapter. We should rejoice knowing that God is just. That when we look into the world and we see things that are not right, we know that God sets it right in the end. Even if we don't see it happen in this life, we know that God works all things for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. Let's remember, in light of this story, to trust God in all the parts of our lives. When our country seems broken, when our relatives are sick and dying, when we're raising children and we feel inept to make the right decisions, to know everything, to do all the right calls about our future. Commit it all to God. Know that he is just. He works it together, and he loves you. In this faith and trust, let's turn to our God in prayer.